Coming up tonight on Perspectives, we go front and center with the latest news coming out of Albany, as now Senate Republicans now have the majority in Albany after a real, what we call tense day on Monday, a day after state Senate Republicans and two dissident Democrats staged a coup. We're actually trying to find out really who's in charge. Our guests in studio will share a little bit about exactly what happened and exactly what it means, particularly for the borough of the Bronx, as well as New York State. Joining us in studio, Ed Culvert, Professor Ed Culvert, who is professor in the African American Studies at Lehman College, also the editor of the Culvert Chronicles, the newspaper seen and read literally across the boroughs of New York City. Also, we're pleased to be joined by Anthony Rivieccio, director of the Northwest Bronx Liberty Democratic Club. Try saying that twice. And we're glad to have both of you gentlemen here with us. As we look now, the question is, first of all, who's in charge?
It's a crisis. It's alarming that people who were elected by one party have jumped ship and went to the other party, knowing full well that the state is in crisis. I do not feel that people of that caliber should even hold public office. Governor Patterson has his nose to the wheel. He's trying to right the ship of state, and he needed to have the Senate and the Assembly with him. This rich man, and we know what rich men do with their money, has influenced.
You're referring to Tom Golisano.
Exactly. Has become involved. Who does he represent? He represents himself. He was not elected to office, and why would you come in and use your influence to upset the apple cart, so to speak?
Let's bring our viewers up to date. For those people who are just tuning in and just really trying to get a glimpse of actually what's going on in Albany on Monday, two state senators, one from the Bronx, Senator Pedro Espada, a Democrat, Senator Hiram Montserrat, both Democrats changed their party to become Republicans, then giving the Republicans the majority in the Senate, ousting Senator Malcolm Smith, then the majority leader. A new party, both of those men were actually sworn in, and actually Senator Espada is actually now the leader. And Anthony, the question is, first of all, how does Espada ascend to the leadership given the fact that he just got elected and he's been out of politics for some time?
Let me answer that and get to your first question and put it all together. The person in charge since January 1st, and now it's come out, the chickens come home to roost, is our state senator, the one that actually represents this area where we're sitting at right here, Mr. Pedro Espada, a gentleman that does not live in our wonderful Bedford Park community, and was elected last year in this area from a wide range of fractured Bronx borough leadership. I'm sure you've heard of the Bronx political war that was here in 2008. That seat and race was a sad after effect of that, and the aptitude of the party treating that seat and the residents of the area accordingly allowed Mr. Pedro Espada to come in with money and basically take the seat. As far as Mr. Golisano is concerned, I'll beg to differ a little bit with my friend. Mr. Golisano, since the early 1990s, has been the founder of both the Committee of 100 Democrats, more importantly, the New York State Independent Fusion Party. And the Independent Fusion Party in 1994 was, in essence, a coalition of independent/Republicans that tried to take over many areas of the New York State and local and state races. And he's never really left politics, although, ironically, he's no longer a resident of New York State.
Mm-hmm. And then
he's a resident of Florida.
Right. And so you're dealing with somebody, Tom Golisano, who's a resident of Florida, who some people say now, well, not even some people say, are saying it's got his hands involved in the political cookie jar here in New York. And then you brought up another point when you talk about State Senator Pedro Espada, because you said he does not live in the area. I want to give both of you guys a chance to expound, Professor Culvert.
He doesn't live in the area. In fact, when he was questioned by the news media, he would not answer. He would not answer about his residence, plus the fact that his financial records have not been fully disclosed the way they ought to have been disclosed. See, I'm not a politician. I have no constituency to appease. I don't feel he should hold office. I also do not feel that when you beat up a woman and try to cut her with a bottle, that you have the right to stand up in the state senate and espouse anything about anybody. You ought to have went to jail for that.
Yeah, I'm in wholehearted agreement with you. To speak more on a person, on a very specific level in regards to it, State Senator Pedro Espada, a little over a year before he was elected, went to 201st and 201st Street and Prairie Avenue, which is about 10 minutes away from here, and purchased the wonderful one-bedroom co-op, which ironically is right down the block from where I live. And according to the court, because there were many residents as well as clubs, my club included, that brought this residency challenge to court, the court determined at that time that because Pedro Espada for a little over a year owned a co-op and therefore paid property tax on that co-op, he was considered to be a resident of the area. Now, it's not rocket science to know that he lives in Marinick. You can go visit him every morning. He'll open the door for you. You can go to his apartment on 201st Street and Prairie Avenue. And actually, I believe his apartment is 4G. And as the residents would tell you, Mr. Espada is never there, but his dog Lucky is. And they know of Lucky very well because he's a wonderful dog that barks all night. But he's never there.
So when you talk about, say, State Senator Pedro Espada, let's bring you up to date. Afterwards, he did issue a comment to an Albany radio station talking about, we will not rush to take a vacation when the state needs us to come together on real reform. We're not going anywhere, talking about the fact that the state Senate, well, Albany was to shut down on June 22nd. He said June 22nd is not a real deadline. It was imposed on us by then Majority Leader Malcolm Smith. A new coalition government wants to work through the summer, through the fall, to take care of the business of the state of New York. Now, does this normally happen in Albany?
You want to answer?
Thank you. No, it doesn't normally happen.
I mean, there's a time when the session just closes down and we resume, and
you know,
it depends. It depends.
If I'm ever, I find it very shocking to believe that, and I'm very aware of those statements that State Senator Pedro Espada made. I find it very shocking to believe that he would say one of the predominant reasons for this coup, and he calls it a coup himself, is that he felt the Democrats, after being in office, were 6 months of, quote, inept leadership. And if you're aware as to what's happening in Albany, there is a very important New York State housing bill that is sitting on his desk. It's been on his desk for over 3 months. And the elements of that bill will change dramatically how rents are applied in New York City. And right now there's this very big internal debate between resident rights and landlord rights. And this bill has been sitting in Albany on his desk, in which he's the chairman of the Housing Committee for the last 4 months. So when he talks about inept leadership, I'm just finding that really shocking.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to give you a chance to respond to Professor Culvert, but the question I want to ask is this. When Pedro Espada, particularly here in the borough of the Bronx, he ran as a Democrat. We know that the Bronx is a predominantly Democratic borough. Now, given the fact that the Bronx is a predominantly Democratic borough and the constituents voted along those lines for him to go and change to the Republican Party, what does that say, first of all, to Bronxites, and what should Bronxites really be reading into this?
Well, first of all, let's go back a little ways. Let's go back to the Giuliani election. The Bronx is the only county that the Democrats carried in the Rudy Giuliani election. For one thing, the Bronx is solid. What he has done now, he has tried to supplant the leadership, I feel, of the Bronx. Let's look at something else. Let's look at the fact that we're talking about things, but we never talk about people. When we talk about a budget, we're talking about people who earn their living and have earned their living for the city and the state, losing money. We're talking about schools. We also have an important bill coming up dealing with Mayor Bloomberg and the control of the schools. Many of us feel that we have spent our lives in education and somebody else has spent their life doing something else, yet they're going to come in and tell us why Johnny can't read. You see, we have to look at the entire situation. Sure, that housing bill is a very important bill. It's going to change the way business is done. But we also have to look at why at this particular time, when the state is reeling from economic insolvency, would you come in and try to do something to supplant what a man is trying to do? What Patterson is trying to do is to save jobs. He's trying to balance the budget, and he's also taking the hit for it. He's one of the most unpopular governors, if you read the polls, that New York State has had in a long time. But I asked the question, who else would take the bullet like he's taking the bullet? They all, whoever it is, they would have to do the same thing.
Let me take a quick break and come back and talk more about this. We're talking about the political upheaval in Albany.